Well, today is September 13th of 2017, and I am interviewing Elaine B. Ooley. And may I call you Elaine?
Yes.
Elaine is 103 years old, having been born on January 27th of 1914.
That's correct.
Okay. My name is Sue Burkholder, and I will be the interviewer, and we are here in Herscher, Illinois. And would you please state for the recording in what branch of service and what war that you served?
I served in World War II as a WAC-W, which was Women's Air Corps.
Okay. Let's start with just a little bit about yourself. Can you tell us where you were born?
I was born in Two Harbors, Minnesota. It was 54 degrees and I weighed 1 pound.
Oh, wow. Wow. And so were you in the hospital for a while, or did your parents bring you home?
My mother was taken to the hospital in a sleigh because it was 54 degrees and they had drifts that were 5 feet high, and she was taken in a sleigh, and I was born in the hospital.
Wow. Did you have, well, tell us about your parents. What were their names, and what did they do?
My father's name was Raymond Dennis Boucher, and my mother's name was Flossie Mae Woodworth Boucher. And they were married in Decatur, Illinois. Okay. And then my dad was a railroader with the rail company, and their first move was in Villa Grove. And mother was the first young lady ever in Villa Grove, Illinois. And then I think I had a brother, and he was born, so she started having children, and we finally landed down in Mattoon, Illinois, because Mattoon, Illinois was starting to have one of the major railroad centers, and my father was there, and when we got there, we children got of age to go to school, and mother put her foot down, and I went to school in Mattoon, Illinois. Then I went there for a while, and then Dad moved to Decatur, and I went to 1 year in high school in Decatur, Illinois. Then I come back to Arcola, Illinois, and graduated in 1932.
Okay. So did you have any siblings?
I had a brother, and I had a sister.
Okay.
And my sister also was in service. My brother's life was taken when he was 10 years old, so I don't recall much about him.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other members of your family besides your sister that served in the military?
Well, Dad served in 1912.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In that, and I remember when he was very patriotic, of course, and loved our country. And we were taught from the time we were about 5 years old to hold flags and be patriotic, and the 1916 soldiers were returning to, the war was over, and they were returning, and they used to walk down the street in uniform, and Dad would go and get pails of water from the well, and then he'd give us little tin cups, and we'd take it out for the soldiers because it was hot to drink. So I was raised in a very patriotic family, and mother's family, her brothers were all in the Civil War, and their names are recorded down in Kentucky. There's a place there, and 2 of her brothers, one was on one side and one was on the other.
Wow. Wow.
They fought each other.
Hmm.
There were nine kids, so, you know.
Yes. So what was your occupation before you entered the service?
I came out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to Eastern Illinois Teachers College in Charleston, Illinois, which is now Eastern University. I went 1 year and had to drop out because we didn't have any money. It was in the Depression days. And so I dropped out and became a secretary around in Charleston, Illinois. I knew everybody because I'm a people person, and around the square I went around and I offered to type their things that they had for a penny a page and a penny for a copy. And I established a little business. I would get 2 cents for the original and 1 cent for a copy, which wasn't too bad. Then in high school, my best friend, she and I both could take shorthand together and read it. We were good. We were good typists. And so we'd go down to the university and take their papers their term papers, that they type them up. And if I didn't get it, she did, you know. So we'd type it up and then we'd split the money. And then we'd take that money home and give it to our parents. We didn't spend it. Because we were poor. Considered poor. We didn't know it, but we were considered poor.
So you were working at the time. Then what happened that led you to enlist in the military? And I'm going to move the camera while you're talking.
Well, on December the 7th, when Japan decided to take Pearl Harbor, my mother, we heard about it. We didn't have TVs and stuff. We heard about it, and Mother just cried and cried. My dad was gone by that time, and she cried. My sister had gone into service before that. They had been enlisting people, but I didn't go because I wanted to stay home with Mother. And she belonged to the Women's Army Air Corps, WAAC. Then they disbanded that after this Pearl Harbor attack. They disbanded that, and just before it they did. And then she came home and re-enlisted to go back, and she was married by that time, and her husband was drafted or enlisted into the Navy. So she came home, and after December the 7th, the next day, I went right up and enlisted, but I didn't get to go until after Christmas. I was enlisted, but they didn't take me. Then both of us went to Orlando, Florida for my training. She was just there to be reassigned, and so she didn't stay but a few days, but I stayed there for my basic training. After basic training, they sent me to Peterson Field in Colorado. I liked that because we could go up to the peak and different things. But I was there, and at that time, I might tell you that our heat, I was there in the wintertime, the heat we had were these iron, big-bellied stoves, and we had to carry wood in to keep it, stoke it for the night. And we girls learned to do, of course the wood was all given to us, but we learned to we took turns about keeping that fire going all night long to keep us warm.
Can you go back to basic training and just tell me a little bit about basic training? What it was like for you?
In basic training, I was new and scared of it a little bit. But I was at, trying to think of that base in Orlando, Florida. It'll come to me, but I learned that there were rules, and I learned that you obeyed. I had obeyed my mother, but I was young and I was kind of feisty, but I learned very quickly that there were rules and found out knew what it was and immediately liked it. Mm-hmm. And kept my basic training was at Orlando Air Force Base, and it oddly enough, when my boyfriend and I got married, we came back, and guess where he was sent? He was sent to Orlando to Air Force Base, where we were. Mm-hmm. And I served my term, and after I got through with basic, I got sent to Peterson Field. Now, in basic, I was taught how to perform as a soldier, salute, and how to work with everybody. It was a good training course. And of course, we had a lot of exercises, and of course, we had a lot of chores. I carried out the coffee grounds and the garbage, and they had barrels that it was supposed to be coffee grounds here, something there. Well, I didn't obey too well. I just took them out and trashed them. So that one afternoon, I got called in and said, you know, Boucher, you put that trash in all those different barrels. I said, yeah, what difference does it make? Makes every difference. Said, now what we want you to do, you go out there and sort it and put them in the proper barrels. So I did. I went out and spent in the heat the afternoon, got filthy dirty because I had coffee grounds on meat, and it was a mess, but that was the best lesson I ever had. And I didn't get mad about it, I just did it because I'd been trained to obey. So I took care of that, but I learned that if they tell you to do something, you better do it as they tell you to do. I got that training early. And then also I got into the kitchen where I had to clean big kettles. They'd make kettles about, they were at least over a foot. They'd be about that high, and they'd be big around, and I'd have to wash those and clean them. And I'd crawl inside of them and scrub the bottom of it. I was little, only weighed 90 pounds, so I crawled in there and scrubbed them up. I did a good job, but they finally took me off of that because I didn't get as much done because I was doing them too good. I was crawling inside, and it wasn't going too good. They weren't getting them fast enough. But I got changed, and then I got ready. That was the end of my basic. Then I was sent to Peterson Field, where we were trained how to be assistant to different groups of, different areas of what the Army was doing. I had been a secretary, so they made me a secretary. Well, I didn't want to be a secretary. I wanted to be around airplanes. I didn't know anything about airplanes. But I became a typist secretary, and we had cases where where soldiers disobeyed and they were being court-martialed and I worked in that department. I worked in the legal department because I had a lot of experience as a thing. So I worked in that department and got acquainted with a lot of rank. And one day, my father died in the meantime, and they took very good care of me, got me back, and this and that and the other. And after I got back, I think they felt a little bit sorry for me, and the rank was real nice to me. And one day, a colonel called me in, and I thought, well, what did I do? Because we were very much not afraid of them, but we certainly did respect them. So I went in there and I thought, wait a minute, what have I done? I tried to figure it out. And when I got in there, he said, Boucher, sit down. He said, I hear that you don't like to be a secretary. Well, I told everybody that, of course, big mouth. So he said, what do you think you'd like to be? I said, well, I want to be around planes. We had just known about airplanes. We had just begun to learn about them. And I said, I just would love to be around airplanes. And he said, well, we'll think about it and we'll remember. Well, one day I got an order to go to Kirtland Field in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which was the B-24 training base. And so when I got ready to get on the train, we went by train, and they were so crowded, the boys would let us sit on their laps so they'd have a seat, and we all was together. But they were so respectful that they'd say, well, I want to keep my seat, but come over here and sit on my lap. So we girls would sit on their laps and on the train because they were just loaded. Well, I got to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they called me in, and I was just a buck private at that time. I wasn't looking for rank or anything. I was just serving. So he called in and he said, I heard that you like to be around planes. He said, well, how would you like to be an aircraft dispatcher? I said, well, what do they do? And he said, well, we'll train you. And so I was an aircraft dispatcher there for until I had left. And what we really were, we were clerks. We didn't bring the planes in, but we greeted them. We greeted the pilots when they came in, and then we would have certain orders to give them. It was all secret. And then we would record when they got in. And because Albuquerque, New Mexico had four accesses, north, south, east, and west, the only one in the United States that had that access. And therefore we never knew whether one come in from the east or, because it was all secret, loose lips, sink ships. So we would record those I'd stand up on a ladder because I wasn't very big, and record when they came, give them their orders, which of course was sealed, talk to them if they'd talk to you. Sometimes they wouldn't talk to you because it was so secret at that time. And this was in 1943, 44, and 46. It was everything you did. And so one night, a colonel came in, and I had heard dogs barking on the tarmac, and I'd never heard any noise except the planes coming. So when this colonel came in, I said, "Sir, what in the world are those dogs doing out there?" He said, "Well, you didn't hear any goddamn dogs, did you, Boucher?" I said, "No, sir, of course I didn't." And I got scared because I thought I was going to lose my job, because I did not have a right to talk about what went on the tarmac or anything. And I did, just automatically. I was so shocked to hear dogs. I thought, well, and they were barking and dancing around. So I got called in by, I'm trying to think of that officer for the minute. I got called in, he's very famous. I can't think of his name for the moment. I got called in and he said, "Boucher, I hear that you got curious about these planes coming in." I said, "Well, yes." I said, "I didn't get curious about the planes. I got curious about dogs." "But you didn't hear any goddamn dogs, did you?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "You never will hear them, will you?" "No, man, no, sir." And I looked up at him, and of course I respected rank. I said, "Are you going to kick me out?" And he winked at me. He said, "I think we'll keep you." So I went back, but I'll tell you, I never heard anything that went on, but come years later, I found out that what they were taking those dogs down to Waco to see how they would respond to noises, because they were constructing the bomb down there. That's in Waco, is where they were getting ready for Japan, but we didn't know it, of course. But and the dogs were not destroyed, but they wanted to see how they'd react to these noises that they were committing. So I learned that, about 20 years ago, read about it. But I love that job because I got to meet all the officers, and they were kind to me. And I worked from 11 to 7, because I like to go out and go places, and that way I could go home, get a few hours sleep, and then I'd have all day to play. Go wherever or do whatever they wanted me to do. So I was on the night shift for that, and I stayed on it until I left service. I don't know how many years I was on. I've forgotten.
So what were some things that you would do during the day then, when you had your free time?
Well, we had chores, of course. We had chores to do around the barracks, and we all was given chores to do. And I had plenty of time. I love tomatoes, and I went to town one day. We got to go to town occasionally. And I went to town and bought some tomato plants, and I come back and I asked the colonel if I could plant them. Well, he said, "Where are you going to plant them?" I said, "Along the side of my barracks." Well, he said, "I don't see anything wrong with it." He said, "You don't have any tools?" I said, "I'll use my hands." So I dug holes and grew tomatoes, and I've got pictures of me picking my tomatoes. And I gave them all to we had boys coming there to be trained for pilots. They were being trained for that fight we were going to have. And they'd only be there a short time, and they gave them good food and good this and good that, because they didn't know whether this was going to ever come back. And I gave my tomatoes to their mess hall if they'd come over and pick them, and they'd send someone over to pick my tomatoes. So I got a little write-up in one of the papers about the Made a grower. I enjoyed every bit of it.
Did you, I'm sure you made friends
Oh,
while you were in. Can
I
you
just
tell me
love
about that?
people, so I had lots of friends, and I've got two of them left. They're in nursing homes now. Two friends left, and one of them lives in Rhode Island, and one lives in Florida. I'm wondering what happened to her, but they're up in years now. They're 90s, and they're close to hundreds at least. But I haven't found out what's happened in Florida, except that they were there in Phoenix. So I don't know what happened to her. The other one, I got a card from her last Christmas that her nurse had written for her to send to me, and I don't know whether she died or not. I don't get too much information about her. So, but she's in with a vet's home someplace, you know. But that's the only two I've got left at all.
So while you were in, did you? I know you talked about being following the orders and the rules very much, but did you have, like, when you did have free time, did you do anything fun or armory or those type of things?
Sure,
tell me about that.
We could go. We went downtown. You could get a pass if you didn't have something that you'd done wrong, but you could get a pass, and I'd go downtown with the group, and we'd go to a bar and sit and have probably one drink, but a lot of people gave the wax a bad name, but we weren't, because the boys were so respectful to us back in those days. They would never expect anything from you. And we'd sit around the bar there in Albuquerque, and everyone had a picture of their boyfriend, their mother, their family. So there wasn't, and I was there for 5 years, I can't remember now, but we never had one pregnancy. We weren't bad girls. We went, everybody drank, and I didn't smoke because I couldn't, it made me sick. I tried, but I couldn't do it. But we went down to the bar. There wasn't much else to do except to go down and sit at the bars and talk. That was about, and then we had to get back. We had a curfew. We had to get back around 10, sometimes 9, sometimes 10. We'd have to get back, you know. Me, I could only stay till 10 because I'd have to go back and go to work. So, you know, we weren't bad girls. We worked. We loved it, and I had a lot of friends as link trainers and different avenues. We got a chance to learn all about the B-24s, and then the B-17 came in, and Albuquerque, New Mexico was the only base in the United States that had runways long enough to take care of them and wide enough, because their wings were so wide, and it took so long for them to take off, and they extended a lot of our runways to accommodate the B-17. Then, when the B-17 came in, they got Chinese people from China, and they came over, and come to find out their legs were too short, and they couldn't use them. And I've got pictures when it says east meets west, And we greeted them. They'd have things like that. It was quite something because so many of our boys were overseas, and they let the Chinese kids come over here, and they were good kids, but they couldn't train on B-24s, so they used them otherwise. But they tried them on B-24s, and their legs were too short.
Do you recall any other, I'm sure so much happened while you were there, but just any other thing that stands out to you while you were in that you'd like to mention?
A lot of it. We had, somebody gave us a donkey at the base, and the kids, a lot of times they'd feed it beer and get it drunk. It was fun. I want to tell those stories because they're little true. Sure. It's kids, so they and that animal was caged close to our barracks because we lived off away from where the boys lived. We had our own, and that thing, it was a donkey, and it would just bray at night, and we'd go over and we'd decorate them for different holidays. Sometimes we'd put this around their necks, and the boys would come over, and sometimes they'd bring them things and dress them up. We had a lot of fun with those donkeys. And every time I left the base to go off for leave, I had to go by this guy's pen, and they kept him there in Albuquerque for a long time, and because he became and the General Arnold was the one that let us keep him. He was supposed, I don't know how we got him. I don't remember that. I knew at the time somebody gave him to us, and then the boys were allowed to build a fence around him, but they had to feed him. He had to be fed and watered and taken care of, and the boys would do that. And if they didn't, they were penalized, that. But General Arnold was the one. I don't think he's the general. I don't know what he was. But anyway, maybe he was. But anyway, he let us have that animal if we would take care, if the boys would take care of, and they did. Of course, they got him drunk occasionally, and he. These are fun things. I want people to know that we were ordinary kids. We did things that wouldn't be done today, but these are just little things that we got into, Well, we got lessons on what to do. We had to kind of they couldn't take any beer near him. But we'd feed him things. A lot of times we girls would hide things from mess and put them in our pockets and take it over and give it to this donkey. We weren't supposed to feed him, but we did. And I can't remember his name now. I'm trying to think of him, but anyway, he was a good-looking guy. He was big.
And how did it, having the donkey there, just having an animal, how did that make everybody feel?
Well, I think they loved it. The base, everybody, we'd have visitors to come to see our donkey. He was a celebrity.
Wow.
And in our papers, in our magazine that we had, that would go out once a week or once a month, I can't remember. They always had a story about him. I'm trying to think of his name. gosh, I can't remember his name, but they always had a story about what he did or what happened to him. He was always in the news.
Yeah, well, that's fun. Let's see. Did you receive any medals or citations?
I received I've forgotten, a medal for being a good soldier and obeying. I just got to be PFC, but I went to officers training and passed it, and I was scheduled to go with the group that was going to France when we liberated France. And when my boyfriend was sent back from the islands, I decided to get married. So, and he got me out, that was 1948. So I didn't go to France. My group went, but I never regretted it because I enjoyed my married life. This was my boyfriend, when he was a paper boy, I'd tell my mother, I love him. Well, of course you can love him, honey, but that's all. But we got to be, his mother and my mother were great. You know, we lived in a small town, everybody knew everybody. And he got mad because I told everybody he was my boyfriend. He'd go around and tell them he wasn't. So, you know, the neighbors finally, his mother come over one day and she said, Flossie, would you tell Elaine to stop talking about being Freddie's girlfriend? We were just kids, we weren't girlfriends. We talked about it. And that hurt my feelings about her, but then I learned to love her. You know, I got over it in a short time. But Mother made me keep my big mouth shut. But he finally come back and married me, so I got him anyway.
Oh, goodness. So you got out when you were married, and then you started...
I was married in the base.
Oh, okay.
I was married in Kirtland Field.
And you stayed in for a little while then?
Well, I had to, because they let him come back, but then he had to go into camp before they'd let him be out. So I didn't see him for a year after I was married. I didn't see him for a year because he took off, and the colonel, the general, he arranged for us to have a party at the hotel downtown, and all the guys got to come. And what really, my husband was an officer, and I was a private, so the officers got to come to our party, and they paid for it. I don't know, because he was a Pearl Harbor survivor, come back, and they let us get married, but they took him back to camp because he hadn't been completely out, and he never did get out. He died in service, but he had to go through something to come back to the United States because he served from the time that he was drafted. He was sent to Hawaii, and I never heard of that place. Mother said, he's gone, forget him now. We were in school, high school, and he said, forget him, honey, he's gone. And I said, well, maybe not, but I never really forgot him. And I didn't know it, he didn't forget me either.
So you said he died while he was in the service?
What?
You said he died while he was in the service?
No, he was injured while.
Injured, oh, okay.
Never was well.
Yeah.
No.
I was going to ask you something.
Just.
All right, well, so eventually.
And he stayed in the service. They kept him, but he stayed as a in the he was in the intelligence department in Hawaii, and when he come back, he was in the finance office.
Okay.
He stayed in service, but he was injured. He had some kind of a back injury that he just never was able to. He could sit for a while, so I guess he was smart because they put him in finance. Mm-hmm. And then he finally got out because he couldn't. Something happened in the laws. I don't know what happened, but he went to work in Chicago at. I can't remember that base up there. My God, it was the biggest one. But he was finance officer for it till he died.
Yeah. And then what did you do? You finished your service?
I moved. He could get me out. See, I think, I don't know whether they said officer, but officers could come back because he's an officer, and if they married you, they could take you out of service. So I just got out when he was able to go to Fort Sheridan. Mm-hmm. When he went to Fort, we were still both married in uniform, but then when he was going to go to Fort Sheridan, then I didn't want him to go. I wanted to go. And see, Fort Sheridan wasn't far away from Mattoon, Charleston, where I lived. Mother was still living there. So I stayed in there until then. We got transferred back to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he and I lived there for a while. So we just had each other, and we were very happy. Never had problems, never had words. We were just happy to be together, and particularly when he had just escaped death too. So it was a great marriage. And then when he died, I stayed a widow for 12 years, and then I met my second husband and married him, had him 18 years. Then he died. So I could have him, but I couldn't keep him. But I've had a very happy life. After my second husband died, we had taken a little girl. Her parents died, and we sort of adopted her. And then when she got out of school and everything, she went into travel. She's a travel agent. And when I was 89, we started traveling, and we went to France, Germany, Italy, Egypt, India, China, we traveled the world because she had assignments, and she took me as her traveling companion. And she's living today. I stay in touch with her. Mm-hmm. But I got to travel a lot of places I would never have been. Mm-hmm. And then I also did a lot of volunteer work. I volunteered at the St. Louis Vets Home and got a life membership there. And I was Penelope, the clown with green hair, and I'd entertain people. So I've had a good life. And now I've lost all my family except this second cousin. But they're all upstairs, and they kind of watch after me. And I'm very happy, very contented. And now that I've got my hip and can walk, I've really got it made. I've got about 6 months more to get over it, but at least I'm not going to be in a wheelchair. So I'm just thrilled to death. And Dr. Puri from Bradley, Illinois, was the only doctor that would take me, because I had 2 doctors in St. Louis that turned me down because they said I was too old and they didn't want to take chances of taking my life. But Dr. Puri saw that I was a very healthy person, and he took the risk. He's a research surgeon, and he belongs to some societies that they study orthopedic, and he took pictures of me walking the other day to show how well I had recuperated from this. So he took pictures of me with him for his mother, he said. I guess that's where it's going to go. But the walking was going to go on the web, so I don't know. But that's my life.
Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
Beg pardon?
Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
Oh, yes, I belong to Post 388 in St. Charles, and I belong, well, it's St. Peter's, but in St. Charles County. And I was also in Charleston, Illinois, Bridgeton, Illinois. I've held all the posts in the American Legion. I've been there about 35 years. And they offered me commander, but I didn't take it because I didn't feel I could. I think the men had to take care of that. So I wouldn't, but I held all the other posts. Then we closed our post in Bridgeton, and I moved to St. Charles, and I joined Post 88. I have belonged to it. I haven't been able to attend it because I've had this degenerative hip it's been going on for years, and it finally was going to put me in a wheelchair, but I got around that too.
So if you could just reflect back on your service and the time you spent, how do you feel like that has affected your life in general?
Well, first of all, I'm very patriotic. I love my country. I pray for my country because my country's mixed up, and I enjoyed every moment of my years in service. I treasure them. It was an opportunity that came into my life, and I enjoy my work with the American Legion, and I've volunteered out at the St. Louis Vets Home for many years and got a life membership there because I worked with them. I've just always been a busy person, busy into something going on all the time. But my service is very dear to me, and I'm worried about our country now, where what might happen to us with North Korea, and I stay informed well about my country, and I feel that I was privileged to serve it when I had the chance to serve it. So to me, every veteran every veteran in World War II deserves a credit. Vietnam, the country mistreated them. we're trying to get them back. We've got a lot of them into our posts. We're trying to prove to them that it was just a certain group of people, not everybody. The Vietnam did a great job. They were sent without support. And then they were left adrift. And then they come home and they were despised, which broke my heart, because they didn't deserve that. They didn't go, they were sent there. So the Vietnam group they got a place in my heart. And if I find them, I make sure that if there's anything I can do or cause to be done, I'll do it.
I know you mentioned your sister briefly, but
yes.
could you just give us a little
my sister,
nutshell version of her?
Before the war broke out, they were recruiting, and she was married, and her husband joined the Navy, or was drafted. I don't know which had happened. And after he did, she joined the WAAC, and she served in it. I don't remember the years now. And then after she re-enlisted into the WAC, she had been she worked in a secret group that it's hard to go back on that one. But she traveled a lot to different countries as an interpreter in whatever this was. And she got some kind of heart disease or something that got in the valves of her heart, and she died in the service. She died at Chanute Air Force Base, in the hospital there, yes. But she served more years than I did, and her husband was killed. So he was in the Navy, so they're both gone. But they both served.
So if you, or would you speak to the generations to come that might see or hear your interview video, if you were able to, what would you say to them?
First of all, I'd say learn history. Get interested in our country, what it was, how we started, what we stand for or stood for, and learn the history of our country and protect our country. That's what I would tell them. And if you have to go to war, go, because that's God's design for you. And if you're to survive it, He'll protect you. And if you're not, He wants to take you up there and treat you good. So that would be my advice to them. That history is not taught, and we've gotten to the point now that we have different groups in this country that don't want to remember. Now they're tearing down all the Southern generals. That's a disgrace in my book. They're our history. We might have fought them, but they were good men, and they were fighting for what they believed in, and they deserve to have those beautiful statues. They're taking them down, which is a disgrace in my opinion, and I'm strictly against it. There should be something that would cause people not to hate those generals and soldiers. They did what they were told to do. They did what they believed in. Now maybe it turned out to be wrong, but they believed in it and they worked and they served, and they deserve as much credit as the losers deserve as much credit as the winners. And that's my opinion. And I'm just appalled that the Southern governors have allowed these beautiful, beautiful statues and history to be buried. And I think that I know a lot of people that are against it. Of course, the Legion is, naturally. So we'll find out. God's going to take care of this country, because God brought the people over, and it started as a Christian country. In every place it's in God we trust, or every place. You go to the Capitol, it's all there. And all of our buildings have got in God we trust. So they can't take it away from us. They may try, but they're not going to get it, because God's not going to let them. They may try, but they're not going to take it. When we faced World War II, our country didn't face much, but the world did. And the English and our country happened to get together, and France joined and the others joined, and we were able to whip them. And I think our generations to come will do the same thing. I think we're looking forward to some kind of warfare. But I guarantee you, whatever you might say about our young people, they'll come to. They'll get there. They'll fight this thing. They'll win. We'll save this country. And that's why this information that you're getting, which I can't contribute a lot because I was a very minor player, it's good to have this history left for people to have access to it. And the Library of Congress is exactly where it belongs. And the job you're doing, assisting it, getting it started, is commendable, and we're very grateful to you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to allow me to speak with you today, and for sharing your story.
I didn't have much to share because I didn't do much, but
you know, it's okay. It was your story, and it's part of our history, and that's what we appreciate. We really do appreciate it. Sure. And I want to thank you very much for your service to our country.
You're very welcome.
All right.
Thank you.